Gotta turn the camera on. Hopefully y'all can hear me. What am I doing here? There I am. Until it craps out on me, huh? If the computer crashes this time, I'm done. Yeah, I thought I would give my performance an 8 out of 10. I think I handily won the debate, but I thought that there were things I could have done better. And I do have to give credit to Pisco, because he has a debate strategy that works out for him a lot, and it's frustrating, which is he just drones on and on and on without actually answering a question or saying anything substantive. And it has this effect of running... Oh, sorry, the audio's low? My mistake? Let me... There we go. Hopefully that's better. Sorry about that. So, yeah, I think that I did leave some stuff on the table. But Pisco has this effective strategy of sort of running out the clock, which is he'll just drone on and on and on and on and on about something that's sort of irrelevant. For example... on the January 6th portion of the debate where he's talking about, well, Mario Bowser's the only one that, requested, right? Well, the truth is Mario Bowser rejected the idea of using the National Guard as security. And what she did was request a handful of 100 National Guard people or something like that for traffic control, but not to have the authority to actually be used as defense. But it takes 15 minutes to get to that. And it's just this constant slog. Instead of just saying, and I'm getting frustrated. I'm just like, did she say that she didn't want them? Well, the RFA, the first RFA that we are looking at on December 31st, but it's like he just doesn't answer the question. And he continually does this over and over. For example, the Norfolk memo that he's talking about. Oh, they sent all the data over. And then it takes 20 minutes of going through the debate to be like, yeah, but the memo they sent just literally said Trump supporters might clash with protesters. It could get bloody. Right. That was believed anyways. Of course, more specific intel on the Norfolk memo would have been important. But what Sun testified that I've seen in both of his testimonies that he thought was important was the intel that said that they were going to attack Mike Pence, and the intel that said that they were going to attack members of the Capital City Police and things like that. That's what Sun was saying would have been important, and that's the excuse that House Sergeant-at-Arms Paul Irving gives. He said, well, if I would have been made aware of that and more intel like that, then of course I would have deployed the National Guard, right? But Pisco sort of runs out the clock on these sorts of things. And so he's constantly referring to sort of, just going into the week. You can even see it towards the end when he's arguing with Andrew and things like that. So there's so much that I had to get to that I was unable, even a simple question well, who was tasked with, the primary person tasked with security there on January 6th? What's he say? Does anyone remember? Donald Trump. Now that's bullshit. Then he got riffs. Well, Donald Trump is the chief executive officer, blah, 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 blah. That's bullshit. We all know. And then I just have to sit there and let him drone on for 2.5 minutes. It's that's clearly not what the question was, and he knows that. Then I'm like, I'm going to ask you again, who was it? Well, the DOD. The Metro Police. And all of that's bullshit, and he knows it. He knows that it's all bullshit. But he knows his audience and Destiny's audience that's watching is going to be like, yeah, sounds good, sounds good. It's just not the case. When it comes to protecting the agency that's tasked with protecting Capitol grounds, it's chiefly the United States Capitol Police. They could request from the Metropolitan Police, they could request from the National Guard, but for the National Guard to even be there, they have to be sworn in as U.S. Capitol Police officers. And so it takes 15 minutes to get to something, because you're like, sure, Sund, yeah, okay, you're right. He was the guy that's the primary guy. But he doesn't want to do that because then he knows what the follow-up is. So it's he has to deflect on every single question. And you eventually get to the truth, but then 2/3 of the debate that you wanted to get to, you don't get to. Because he's just been deflecting. And it's the same thing he would do in a Burisma debate. It's the exact same strategy. Just minutia that's not germane to the actual topic that's being talked about and just droning on about it over and over and over. That's sort of the strategy that he employs, which allows sort of a run out the clock. Now, I still think I won the debate quite convincingly. The only explanation, as I predicted, that he has for any of this is just incompetence. That's it. FBI was sitting on information that there was about to be an insurrection. They were going to try to kill Mike Pence, but they didn't tell any of the relevant people. Why? Incompetence. Oh, it must have been that someone just didn't report it up the chain of command. That's it. Yolanda Pittman, she was the person in charge with intelligence that didn't do anything. Nancy Pelosi tried to promote her. You know, and notice how sort of the little things, like here's a good story, which, you know, to me this is one of the most important things. And the way he just washes it away, right? Son, the Capital City Police Chief, January 3rd, he is by law required to get permission basically from 3 people. The Sergeant at Arms is basically what the law says. He has to get permission from one of the 2 Sergeants at Arms to request the National Guard. And seeing as how he is the guy that is the tactical guy. This isn't some abstract like Trump just saying, yeah, the National Guard should be there. This is the guy who's literally tasked with the on the ground, put people here, put people here. He's thinking on January 3rd, even though the intelligence is being withheld from him, he's thinking, yeah, we're going to need National Guard. So he goes to get permission. So there's the House Sergeant at Arms under Pelosi, and then there's the Senate Sergeant at Arms under McConnell. So first he goes to the one under Pelosi. He says, can we have the National Guard? He says no because of optics. Okay, well then let's go ask the Senate guy. So it takes him an hour or 2 to get to the Senate guy. He goes to the Senate guy, and Son says he finds it really odd that as soon as he asks the question, there's like this pre-canned answer like, well, what you need to do is call the DC Guard. So he calls his buddy Walker, and Walker's like, well, here's what we might be able to do. But he can't officially ask. There is no lawful mechanism for him to just call the Guard and have the Guard sent. He needs one of these 2 people. So then he says, so in April, and Stenger is dead now. He died. But before he died, he has dinner with Sund, or lunch. And Sund says, hey, you remember on January 3rd when I came to you and I said, hey man, like, I would like to have the Guard, and you had this pre-planned answer? And Stenger tells him, yeah, the reason I had that answer was because Nancy Pelosi, Sergeant at Arms, called me and said we can't let him have the National Guard because Pelosi would never go for it. Oh, Andrew, please, please, please. I thought the moderation was fine. Pisco is very good at talking at great length, saying nothing. And I've consciously tried not to interrupt as much, though I certainly got worse as it went on. But it's not the fault of moderation. Not everyone's going to stay up for 7 hours, and I totally get it. I totally get it. So what's Pisco say to that? That's striking. Imagine that. The Sergeant at Arms are supposed to come up with these opinions themselves, right? But instead, the one under Pelosi is calling the other one and saying, make sure you don't give him the Guard. Because Pelosi wouldn't want it. And Pisco goes on this 2-minute riff about, but you don't have any evidence that Irving called Pelosi. Maybe he just assumed that's what Pelosi would think. Okay, let's say that's true. Still massively inappropriate. Why would he think Pelosi would think that? What's up, Ninja Gundam? But he's just like, well, there's no proof there's a call. Okay, so are we subpoenaing Nancy Pelosi to say, did you call Irving? Are we subpoenaing Irving to say, did you call Pelosi? Did you have a talk with her? And he's just like, well, Republicans should do that. Wouldn't Pisco be calling for that? Wouldn't the January 6th committee be calling for that? There's 2 crucial parts to the timeline of the debate. There is the actions or lack of actions before January 6th. And that's where the FBI specifically comes in. They had all of these agents. Now, I didn't get to this, but Representative Biggs is claiming that they have evidence that there were over 200 FBI sources in the crowd that day. If that number is anywhere close to accurate, wouldn't that imply that the FBI, at the very least, don't even say that those were the people that were inciting violence or anything. Doesn't that imply that there's so many people on the ground from the FBI sources that the FBI thought that it was serious? So how could you explain then that they didn't think it was serious enough, or it just slipped their mind to actually tell the people tasked with defense to have an appropriate defense? How could you think that? And I'm sorry, just general, that's just how the FBI is, they're incompetent. If that's true, if it is true, that's actually worse than being corrupt. If the FBI is that bad, then Vivek should win and disband them completely anyways. So that's the first part. Why were these lack of actions taken January 6th? Why wasn't the intel shared with the people to actually provide security? Why were requests from National Guard denied because of things like optics? The second part of the debate, which is probably more interesting, which I barely get to, is once Sund, who is tasked with security, on 1257 says, okay, shit, I need the National Guard. Why is he being denied by all sorts of people, including the very same Paul Irving that's the Sergeant-at-Arms under Nancy Pelosi? Then Irving lies when he testifies. When Irving submits his testimony, he says, Sund didn't call me until like 2 o'clock, and I immediately approved the National Guard. That's not true. Sund started calling at 12:57 and provided the phone transcripts to prove it, and was in with a room full of people. And when finally, after 71 minutes, Irving gave him the go-ahead, he said that he actually said, hey, you, mark down the time, because he was that pissed off. But Irving just lied. He said he had to go up the chain of command, which was Nancy Pelosi. Pisco doesn't deny that. That's the only person above him, Nancy Pelosi. So for an hour, 71 minutes, he's getting 11 calls, and he's like, I gotta kick it up the chain of command. I gotta kick it. Why? Then all of a sudden, we could see from the camera crew that was embedded with Nancy Pelosi, after the people get into the Capitol, now Pelosi's on it. She's saying, if Trump comes here, I'll punch him in the face. Chuck Schumer's on the phone in the Pelosi's daughter's documentary she's filming. We need the National Guard right now. Right, because they got the optics they wanted. That's what they wanted. Breach at the Capitol, bam, we got it. Great. Yeah, and Alley Cat gets it. You can't have the conversation because you can't get to a lot of these details because every single slog of a point, Pisco's got to drag his feet. Now compare that to like how I debate or how Andrew Wilson debates. We might be wrong at times, but we give honest answers. And I'm not going to say that brevity is not my strong suit, but I'm answering faithfully. The Ray Epps situation. I know that Destiny and Pisco make, Ray Epps, it's such a conspiracy, blah, 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 blah. What it's speaking to is that we were told for over a year, there were no agents, there were no sources of the FBI in the crowd. Now they full on admit it. Yeah, okay, there were some. They won't tell us how many, but there were some. Why not? Why can't they tell us how many now? Ongoing cases. When will we hear about that? That's what they always say. We still can't hear any of the shit about Hunter Biden. Ongoing case. Can't talk about it. Ongoing case. It'll be ongoing for 8 years. We still can't hear about JFK. Here's another point that I made with the caller made. You could simultaneously say Trump was derelict. You could even say that Trump wanted his supporters to engage in violence. But that's not exclusive of the FBI. Could have wanted that as well. Could have wanted those optics. It's not exclusive. You could hate Trump, think he's an insurrection, want him out of office immediately, want him in prison for the rest of his life, lock the key, throw away the key. You still have to answer for what the FBI did. You still have to answer why Irving and Nancy Pelosi didn't want the guard deployed for over an hour. You still have to answer why then Lieutenant General Pyatt at the Army, who is one of the 5 people, the head honchos, including Mario Bowser that's on the phone, he's the one that speaks up and says, no, we don't want the guard because of optics. This is as people were going into the Capitol. He's still saying. So we're supposed to believe that these people thought it was so serious, that it was an impending insurrection, that Congress people's lives were in danger, and they're like, oh, well, optics. And when I bring this up to the caller, because I actually got to talk to him, he says, well, of course that's believable because all these people care about is their career. Isn't that making my argument? Oh, so he thought it would be beneficial to his career to not have the guard sent. And wouldn't that apply to the FBI? Oh, they thought sharing that intelligence would be beneficial to their career. And then even in that level, it's like getting pulling teeth to admit for Pisco to admit anything. I had a similar analogous situation on the Burisma thing, right? With the firing, Biden forces the firing of this prosecutor, Victor Shokin. New guy comes in, Litsenko. I said, okay, Pisco, can you at least admit this? The new guy coming in ended up benefiting Burisma because he finally completely ended the case. And Zlochevsky, the owner of Burisma, came back and celebrated. He fled the country. He wasn't in Ukraine while Shokin was there. He was afraid of prosecutions. Then when Lutsenko comes in, after Shokin's fired, Lutsenko comes in and he's like, case over. Zlochevsky comes in. Now, by any definition, you could say, this. I could do Pisko's argument. I could be like, okay. It did end up working out for Zlochevsky. That's true, it did. But that doesn't prove anything. That's an argument. It took like 15 minutes. Pisko's like, well, it depends on what you mean by benefit. What does that mean? Because, like, hypothetically, it could, 20 years down the road, this could turn and blah, blah. What's up, Rachel? Is the stream still going? I hope so. Can someone let me know in the chat if the stream's still going? Because someone said lost the stream. Okay. Similarly, when I'm like, well, can you at least admit that this benefited the Democrats? Because their narrative, well, Trump's ahead in the poll. What the fuck are you talking about? That's the sort of shit that I'm talking about. It's just so incredibly frustrating. It's evident in conversations like that specific question. But he's doing that in every single thing. Oh, like the whole memo of Mario Bowser thing. Oh, okay, Rachel, thanks, yeah. Does everyone understand why I wanted to do the Jamal Bowman thing first? Does everyone get it? 2 reasons. 1, so that everyone could see, and I'm sorry, and look, again, I say this, Pisko is a likable guy. And I know people aren't going to believe this. I have friends, like honest to goodness real life friends, that are more fucking insane than Pisko. My one good friend, I'm 90% convinced is like in Antifa. We just don't talk about politics and shit. Maybe if we were hanging out every day, I'd grow to hate him, but we see each other like once, twice a year, think, fine guy. We'll, talk about all sorts of shit. I'm not saying like Pisko's evil, I want Pisko punished. I'm not saying that at all. Though I do suspect that under the right circumstance, Pisko would cheer for my jailing. I do suspect that. But he is certainly a bad faith piece of shit. What I had hoped would happen, and this is what, if you were watching my stream before, if anyone wonders why my stream cut out, my live stream, my computer just fucking overheats. So I do apologize for that, but Crucible has better quality anyways, and I hope that supporting that channel, I think, is more important in the grand scheme of things than people watching one debate on my channel. I hope my audience goes to the Crucible. I think that it is the most important conservative platform online. I say that truthfully. Andrew didn't pay me any money, they didn't bake me any cookies or anything to say that. I truly believe that. We need a platform to get into this space, and I think even if I don't agree with everything that Andrew or Zen or Rachel say, I think that they absolutely are putting their money where their mouth is and getting into the culture wars in the political world online in a way that 3 years ago it was impossible to consider. Every fucking panel I did was left-wing moderation, so maybe my channel crashing was not a bad thing. There, I sucked up. Check will be in the mail, right, Andrew and Rachel? So, but anyways, what I was saying is, no, January 6th, Nancy Pelosi's phone records are off the table. January 6th committee never tackled it. Never. In fact, Benny Thompson allegedly said Nancy Pelosi's off all of her communication stuff, can't talk to him. Why? If we could go after Mark Meadows, if we could go after Jim Jordan, why not Nancy Pelosi? Why can't we see her records? What's the harm? It's all about ensuring security, right? Wally would send me cookies. I believe that. So the first reason to do the Bowman thing was to show that Pisko's a bad faith piece of shit. Now, if you had any questions of how I'd hoped if you followed beforehand, what I was talking about was like, Andrew was like, how long? I was like, I don't think it'll take long. Because I still held out hope that Pisko was going to say, listen, I think you were wrong to call me bad faith. I thought you were rude. But yes, you were right. it turns out it definitely seems more likely he pulled it for a delay because he didn't even try to go out the door. But he can't do it. He can't. He can't do it. He can't. The video is there. The video is there. What more do I need to say? There's a fucking video. I'd pull it up right now on my computer, but it would probably overheat. Let's see if I can pull it up my phone and I'll show you. If I could type, my fat fingers. Let me get the right angle here. There's not a reflection. There, let's turn this damn thing on. Here's the video. Bowman walks up. Doesn't push the door, takes the signs off, pulls the alarm, walks away. One more time. Jabal Bowman says, I went up, I pushed the door, it was locked. So I pulled the alarm to get out the door. He doesn't even attempt to go back to the door. He pulls the signs down, pulls the alarm, leaves. It's plain as day. There's no debate. And it's not even that Pisco refuses that he denies that, right? It's the way in which he does it. Do you see what I mean about sucking time? I was like, it's very simple. Pisco, you said there were 3 options. Option 1. And this is it. This is the 3 options he gave. Option 1, he thought that pulling the alarm wouldn't trigger the alarm, but he did it to get out the door. Pisco says that's bullshit. Option 2, he knew that the alarm would go off, but thought, oh, well, it's worth it. I need to get out the door. And he pulled it to get out the door. That's option 2. Option 3 is he pulled it for some sort of delay. And Pisco said, I don't think any of the options are likely. I don't understand how you could say that, because if it's the only 3 options, one of them had to have occurred. But if he had to be pressed, he would say that he pulled it knowing the alarm would go off, but did it to get out the door. That was his argument. I said, Pisco, do you stand by that? He says, yes. I said, okay, well, we have a video now. That's absurd. And he goes off on this, well, see, I said, what I'm talking about is like probabilities and held a gun to my head. All of that's irrelevant. Sure, you could say, I'm not very confident, but my prediction, that's it. That's all I give a shit. Your confidence level could be 1%. I don't give a fuck. You're still saying, after seeing the video, that it's more likely that he was trying to get out the door. That's the point. But he just keeps fucking rambling. Well, why would I say that? I told you why, because you're a bad faith hack. I explained it quite clearly in my opening statement and then afterwards. But that is exactly how he debates on these other topics. Incontrovertible proof of something. Here's the video, dude. How do you explain this? And his answer is, well, why would I lie? Why would I be bad faith? Why would I do that? And again, the best example I could come up with, it's like a wife seeing a video of her husband cheating on her and then confronting him with the video and go, that's you. You're cheating on me. And the husband going, but why would I cheat on you? That's ridiculous. I love you. Why would I ever cheat on you? But the video's right there. But why? You're not making any sense. Why would I cheat on you? And I knew that we had a lot of the debate to get to, and Pisco had already been fucking delaying and obfuscating in the first topic. And so, I'm just like, dude, I have nothing more to say on this. I could tell you again, and then this is what I've said. The reason is twofold. One, and he's full of shit. This is true. One of the charges that people have said, I've had this debate, not necessarily with just Pisco. I've had this debate with a lot of people. I'll talk about the violence that occurred May 30th, 2020. The problem I have, and it's when I'll get to the definition argument that Andrew's having at the end with Pisco and that was brought up. That was the one part of the debate I didn't really want to get into, but I totally understand why Andrew and the audience would want that part of the debate. The definition of insurrection, because I knew that Pisco would try to talk about that for 2 hours. It would just be like legalese talking about these definitions, which is why I said my answer was, yeah, we could talk about specific legal definitions. Colloquially, the definition I'm going with is a bunch of armed people with a serious attempt to overthrow the government. That's it. That's what I mean by insurrection. I said the problem is that if we take some specific definition that's overly broad, that we could say that there's hundreds of examples of this, then we would have to say, like, why wasn't this applied to these other examples? And that's the real problem, because what happens is we could see with things, this isn't unique, I didn't get into this, but the Logan Act, for example. The Logan Act's this archaic law that's never successfully been used to prosecute anyone. And what it says is non-governmental, I can't remember the official language, but like non-governmental members can't communicate with hostile foreign powers governments, right? Now, the idea of this would be something like Benedict Arnold, right? That's what they're talking about. You don't want, someone who's, a general or someone who's a civilian cooperating with England to try to take down the United States. Logan Act, right? Clearly the intent of it wasn't the dude who's literally coming in and that'll be his job. That's who Mike Flynn was. Mike Flynn was the dude who literally was going to be NatSec advisor. His job was to communicate with people like Kislyak. So he's on the phone with Kislyak. They'd already won. This isn't a prediction. They won. They were just waiting to be sworn in. He talks to Kislyak. And Joe Biden himself, in a meeting with Sidney Powell and Barack Obama, said, why don't we use the Logan Act to go after Flynn? Never been gone after, or never been successfully prosecuted in the history of the Logan Act. But they're going to use it to go after the incoming National Security Advisor. Well, technically, a technical reading of the law, right, but then, for example, John Kerry, when he wasn't in office, was talking about Iran, telling him about the Iran deal will be reinstated. Same thing, right? No, we don't apply it there. And that's the trick they use. When it's convenient for them, they say, well, apply the letter of the law. And then when it's not convenient, when you say this meets like other people, they say, well, that wasn't the intent. You're being overly broad. You see? You see how they do that? And so, when you get to this definition part, we get into the minutia of this definition. Okay, if we read this definition that Pisco wants that says, basically, like, just from memory, it says, like, using force or the threat of force by a group of people to, like, try to overturn a law or legal actions. That's Black Lives Matter. That's any organization that's talked about systemic racism. That's any organization that's protested ICE facilities. They're using force or threat. Considering threat of force, they're out marching in groups, having clashes with police. Threat of force. So does that mean everyone that supported Black Lives Matter? No, says Pisco, because that's not engaged with. Okay, but you admit that those were insurrections. So what if I marched? What if I'm a congressperson and I marched with Black Lives Matter? Did I engage? No, that wouldn't count. What if I provided a bail fund? No, that wouldn't count. Well, what is it about Trump specifically that he engaged in his insurrection? Well, we could look at what the Colorado court said. You can go to page 111 and see. He said a bunch of things like fight like hell and stuff like that. That's it. So you can see from the Bowman thing how bad faith people, like even with video evidence. Now, if you could see that with the Bowman thing, and I'm serious, there might be Pisco defenders in here. Hell, Pisco might be in the audience right now listening. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Can anyone see that video and remotely defend Pisco's statement that he still thinks it's more likely that Bowman was trying to get out that door than to cause a delay? Can anyone? And then he starts to go off. Well, how would you think it would cause a delay? Well, because if I pull, it's particularly in the Capitol, but any building, I would think there's a chance if I pull an alarm, that will cause a commotion and people to stop what they're doing. I think that's reasonable. even if it's the building next door, especially if the building next door is attached. That's it. You might not say, well, 100% guaranteed that's what you thought, but there's a reasonable chance of that. Right? If the alarms start going off in the building I'm in right now, there's a chance that the people next door might say, oh my gosh, we gotta get out of the house and see what's going on. There's a chance. Everyone would reasonably understand that. And that chance is magnified in the Capitol. Because not only are the buildings attached by tunnels, but if you think that there is a significant disaster that warrants an alarm going off in one area of the Capitol, there is a significant chance that that would require precautions and for people to step in all areas of the Capitol. For example, the fire could have been caused by someone, so you're worried that there are intruders on the premise. That doesn't mean it's guaranteed to have happened, but that's a better potential thought than, I think pulling this alarm will open that door, but I'm not even going to push the door. And even if you don't buy any of that, let's assume that the vote would have went off and Bowman didn't make it. Do you think Bowman would have had a credible argument and the Democrats would have said, Bowman and several other Democrats couldn't make it because an alarm went off in the building they were in and they had to evacuate. And they had to wait for an all clear to get in. They thought they did so. Of course, he would use it as an excuse to delay. He would have come in, wait, don't count the votes. Wait a minute, wait. There was an alarm. All of that's possible. Stack that up against the and people that were there. Granted, the journalists didn't do a good job. There should have been fucking C-SPAN or a journalist there to see if there was some sort of delay in the vote. They said that it actually did cause a delay. That people were ushered out and then brought in one by one. Of course he is Alley Cat. Though his audience would say I'm online trying to cope, so that's fair. And as bad faith as that argument is before the video evidence, how in God's name after the video's evidence could you still say, I still think it's more likely he tried to pull that alarm to get out the door? He happened to not even try to get out the door, but that's what I think. That's the argument. So, people that aren't familiar with me and Pisco debating, I wanted to talk about the Bowman thing first so that everyone could see. Okay, now when Pisco's talking about the issue surrounding January 6th, do you think he's good faith? Do you think he's giving a good faith interpretation of insurrection and things? Of course not. It is clear he is so partisan that it's beyond salvaging. The other reason that I wanted to do the Bowman as a precursor was, remember what I said at the end of the Bowman debate? Remember what I said? If nothing else, this is down to brass tacks. Pisco believes that lying to law enforcement, I've had this conversation with him many times, lying to law enforcement, serious crime. He absolutely believes it. Let me see if I can find this. Lying to law enforcement's a very serious issue. Oh, I gotta be careful. Computer's starting to overheat. I hear it. Alright, I'm not gonna show you. Bowman says, and I quote, your affiant, the law enforcement officer, asked the defendant if he intended to cause a fire alarm, to which he stated no. Now, Pisco already admitted in prior conversations with me and elsewhere, there is zero chance that Bowman didn't intend for that alarm to go off. He knew it would go off. It is beyond the pale to say no. So that's it. That's a lie to law enforcement. Plain as day. But completely verbatim. Did you intend for the alarm to go off? No, I didn't. And Pisco says, well, I think what he really meant was, yes, I intended this specific alarm to go off, but I didn't know that that would actually cause an alarm in other parts of the building. First off, that is a ludicrous claim for someone who is a high school principal. If you pull the fuck on a fire alarm in a school, guess what? The alarms all go off. But second, even if you don't buy that, how is Pisco going to say, well, what he literally said is a lie, but I assume his intent was, now do Donald Trump. Why is it that every time it's Trump, he's like, oh yeah, we know his intent. Trump's alleged quid pro quo with Zelensky. We know what his intent was. We know. Really, I think his intent could have been he thought that Biden committed a crime and wanted cooperation in it being investigated. Nope. His intent was just to help him win. We know it. We know that was his intent. Okay, well, what about Joe Biden's quid pro quo? I think his intent could have been to benefit his son. No, that couldn't have been his intent. Okay, what about Hillary Clinton's private server? I think it was to, intentionally hide from Freedom of Information Act requests and stuff like that. No, we don't know what her intent was. We can't know. It's hard to prove intent. But not with Trump. With Trump's intent, it's black and white. He's guilty. He's bad guy. Trump did it. That's his intent. Okay, what about Mike Flynn? Mike Flynn said, I don't remember that call could have happened. No, we know. We know that was a lie. We know that Flynn really did remember. We know it. We know he remembered and he lied. Okay, what about Jamal Bowman? He was asked point blank, did you pull the alarm with the intent of the alarm going off? And he said no, and you've admitted that that's obvious bullshit. Well, I don't know. His intent might have, when he said that, he didn't think he was lying and blah, blah, blah. It's every fucking time. And it's not just Pisco, that's the left in general. They always assume malicious motive with Trump. Every single time. They're like, we could mind read Trump. We know what he was up to. Yeah, absolutely. Charge him. Thanks, John Rock. Yeah. So I was happy to be able to summarize that at the end of the debate. Did you see the grace that he gave Jamal Bowman? Well, even if the words he said were literally a lie, and I think that lying, and I've admitted that I think that there's no way he didn't think the alarm was going to go off, and even though I think lying to law enforcement's a serious crime that should be charged, I think the fact that, I assume his intent was, what he actually meant to say was, oh yes, I intended this specific alarm to go off, but I was unaware that it was connected to other alarms around the building. Does everyone see the ludicrous nature of that? And then when you go to Trump, he says, oh, we know his intent. Now that's another part that I think is interesting. When we get to the idea of, and this is one of the cruxes, I don't think that January 6th was an insurrection. It wasn't. But in order to remove Trump, you would have to say that he engaged in an insurrection, to remove him from the ballot, according to the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. So how do you define engaged in? Well, Trump said a bunch of shit that we think speaks to his mindset. They have to think, what is their subjective opinion of what Trump's intent was, his mind? But we don't have evidence that Trump said, yes, I want them to use violence, so we don't have any statements. So how do you prove his intent? Well, how do they prove? First off, they start by saying, we don't think it's sufficient that lack of action proves intent. So if you don't intervene, we don't think that proves intent. But they say the fact that Trump didn't call in the guard or didn't take it seriously, and like people like Mike Pence talked to him and said, this is serious, and he said, sounds like they're more mad than you. That's not acting. That's not proof of intent or anything that he intended violence or an insurrection whatsoever. It's not. And then what's their other proof? Well, he challenged the slate of electors and he knew that it was a lie that the election was stolen. But that's a question of intent itself. I firmly believe, and I think I'm on good grounds and have argued, that he believed the election was stolen from him. But they say, no, we know that he knew it wasn't stolen. We know that. No, I do not put mayonnaise or butter. I don't really make grilled cheese. My wife puts butter. One of the best instructive speeches I ever saw when I was in university in speech classes was a guy brought in a little hot plate and taught you how to make the greatest grilled cheese sandwich in the world. This dude used like 4 sticks of butter. It was some Paula Deen shit. He's just like, now we re-butter. It was quite humorous. But yeah, no mayonnaise. Mayonnaise I like on certain things. My wife hates the fact that on certain, like with turkey, I like Miracle Whip. She thinks it's heresy to say so. So, anyways. Now you got me on grilled cheese. Fat fuck. You got this fat fucking grilled cheese. Now, where was I? And then they say, well, like, he was saying fight like hell and stuff like that. And then listen to how Pisco deflects. Well, no, you don't understand, Rob. You don't understand. And he just gives some bullshit word salad. No. Like, there has to be a thing of imminence. For example, if I say, at some point someone should attack a building, that's not me inciting. Right. Okay. Great. And yet they give a bunch of examples of Trump saying shit like that wasn't imminent. Saying things like, we need to fight like hell. So then all of those comments could be dispensed with, right? That's no proof of anything. Well, no, it speaks to his mindset. Okay, so then those comments do matter. So it sounds like Pisco, what he was trying to say is, well, if he would have just said that, but wouldn't of the day of January 6th said fight like hell, then it would have... But that's bullshit, because it still implies that him using language like fight like hell is a literal call to violence. And he literally says, go be peaceful. Then he tweets out at 1:38, respect law enforcement, be peaceful. Then he tweets out at like 2:38. And I have these tweets. Oh, here we go. I thought, maybe I... Yeah, I do not. Yeah, whatever. But never mind that. Never mind the calls to be peaceful, because they say, no. When he says peaceful, that's a dogwood. So they start with the assumption Trump wanted violence. And it's like, okay, let's look at the things he said. He said fight like hell. Okay? Politicians say that all the time. It's actually semantically very common in politics to say fight like hell. In fact, here he is saying Mitch McConnell doesn't fight and needs to fight. Does that mean he's literally telling Mitch McConnell to throw fists? Well, no. But he was telling the January 6th people that. But people say this all the time. Where's your proof of it? Well, he said fight like hell before. Right? And there's no evidence that was him telling people to use violence. Well, someone tweeted out the cavalry's coming, and he liked that. Right, another common expression. I mean, take politics out of it. Take a sport. You watch a football game, team loses, coach comes out. We got no fight. We need to fight like hell, goddammit, if we're ever going to win another game. It's time to be men and fight. Is that a literal call for, like, taking your helmet off and fucking throwing punches? Of course not. It's ludicrous. That's their level of proof. Why would they include these comments? Why include irrelevant comments like McConnell has no fight? Okay, if you're saying when Trump says fight, he means literal violence, and then he says McConnell needs to fight, why are you including that if you're not saying that that's Trump saying McConnell literally needs to fight? What's the point of including that then? I don't even know what that is, Ninja. It's just bullshit word salad. Oh, you don't understand, like, the imminence, it needs to be imminent, and, it's setting the mindset. Right, that's all saying basically what I said. That they said that his past rhetoric is evidence that when he says fight, he means literally fight. Oh, Packers. No, I'm a Steelers fan. I know we were talking grilled cheese, but... And they bumbled into the playoffs somehow, the Steelers. So that was, on that point... It's just... But he just obfuscates. It's so... And again, I still think I handily win the debate, and I think anyone that's objective that's watching could see it for what it is. But it's so frustrating because, for me, the reason I like talking to Pisco is, like, when you're getting into the details. This is what this person said. This is what the phone call said. This is what the email... But you can't do it. Because you say one thing... Well, who was the guy that was tasked, the primary guy tasked with defense of the Capitol in January? Now, he knows who it is. He knows it's Capitol Chief's son. But it literally takes 15 minutes to get there. Thank you, John Rock, for the super chat. Says, broke, but here's a little support. Thank you, man. Really appreciate that. And let me just say to everyone, I really appreciate your financial support. If you're having difficult financial times, I don't know if you can tell, but I ain't missing any meals. So please, if you're not in a position to donate financially, don't worry about it at all. For real, I mean that from the bottom of my heart. But I do appreciate the people that donate as well, so thank you. But Pisco gives away the game. It's not enough to say it's an insurrection. You have to say engage. So, again, that's the level of evidence. Well, Trump said that the election was stolen and he knew he was lying. You don't have any proof he knew he was lying. Nonetheless, saying the election was stolen, how's that proof that he engaged in an insurrection? Now, let's flip the script here. Let's do Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter says that policing is systemically racist and they need to fight. No justice, no peace. What do you think that means? They need to fight against it. And they did. They used violence, including against federal buildings. They did. And you could say, but not everyone. And that's true, not everyone. But nonetheless, it's still an insurrection. That's a very interesting argument that we didn't get time to hash out. Okay, let's say that's true. Well, the politicians that were supporting Black Lives Matter weren't supporting the violent ones. Okay. Do you have any proof that Trump was only supporting the insurrectionists, or was he supporting the peaceful people? He said be peaceful. No, with Trump we know he meant the insurrectionists that he was talking positively about. But let's go tit for tat. They say, well, with Trump, he was spreading shit that incited it. He was encouraging their message. Okay, can't you say the same is true of Democrat politicians that talk about systemic racism? That praised Black Lives Matter? Same thing. They were out there, people like AOC were talking. They were actually saying things like the unrest should continue. Kamala Harris said that at one point. Lori Lightfoot was talking about using more specific terms around Maxine Waters. Thanks, Joseph. I really appreciate the super chat. I really do. But none of that counts. None of that counts. Kamala Harris promotes a bail fund. Pisco does something very slick here. He says, but that's not evidence of engaging in an insurrection because there were people that, with the Civil War, wanted to basically stop levying fines and basically pardon them in various ways. Give them money to aid them for their legal troubles and stuff like that. But that's a little different, isn't it? Sounds good. Oh, well, if even in the Civil War, if they were engaged in violence against the North and violence against the federal government, and there were people in the North that were like, no, we need to help them out. Well, two things. One, are they helping them out while agreeing with their cause? Because that's what Kamala Harris was doing. She was supporting Black Lives Matter while promoting a bail fund. And secondly, was it the day after? See, what Pisco's talking about is like after the war ends, there was sort of reconciliation. That's different than a building is firebombed and Kamala Harris comes out that night or the next day, I can't remember. And it's like, here's a bail fund to help out. Yay, Black Lives Matter. Completely different situation. And he's like, oh no, that's not evidence of engaging. So agreeing with their cause. Thank you so much, CTV. I really appreciate it, man. I hope you're doing great. It's great to see you, man. We'll have to talk sometime. So Trump saying fight like hell is engaging in an insurrection. Kamala Harris parroting the talking points of Black Lives Matter and promoting a bail fund as they burn down police stations is not engaging in an insurrection. He admits that the burning down of a police station is an insurrection. So he's not denying the insurrection occurred. He's just saying that Kamala Harris speaking positively of it and promoting a bail fund to bail out the criminals that were arrested, the insurrectionists that were arrested, that's not engaged with. Oh, you watched the Destiny Alice show? That was a shit show. It's ludicrous. So what's the standard for engaged in? Well, what Trump did, that'll be it. Whatever Trump did, that's the standard. Then on to the definition of insurrection. Now, I believe it or not, although I think Andrew got Pisco on specific points that Pisco was talking about that were bullshit, I think in general, me and Andrew are arguing two different things. Andrew's arguing that it wouldn't be an insurrection to literally be like, 20 of us are going to grab guns, or 2,000 of us are going to grab guns, and we're going to violently overthrow the United States government. That's a rebellion, not an insurrection. I sort of agree with Pisco's approach here that's like, rebellions are also insurrections, but they just go further. Like squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares. So he's saying insurrection's the rectangle, rebellion's a square. It's still an insurrection, it just goes further. That's Pisco's argument, which is fine. Now, Andrew's line of... The reason Andrew's breaking that point is to say, like, there are different people with different definitions even at the time. But I do agree that looking at the definitions of the time is important. And I already had this conversation with Pisco, which is why I was uninterested in having it. Because the problem is, if you look at the definition of insurrection and coup from the 1867 Webster's Dictionary that would have been contemporary to when the 14th Amendment was passed, then it would include basically Black Lives Matter and Antifa and all, you know, La Raza and a bunch of other groups. So those would all be considered insurrections. There would be hundreds of insurrections that are occurring in this country. Then you just have to say, did people engage? Pisco will have you believe that no Democrats engaged in those insurrections, which is ludicrous. But the point I was making with my colloquial definition is the problem is the unequal application of the law, right? If you said, and I could give a real world example. I was arrested at one point in my life because I was at a metal show and I was drunk as shit. And I've told this story before, but I was drunk as shit and I went up to order a beer. And it was a PBR pounder. And it was like $10 or some ridiculous price. And I probably should have been shut off, in fairness. But what they did was they let me put my $10 onto the counter. They took the money. They took the beer, cracked the beer, and instead of handing it to me, he set it down and the bouncer grabs it. So I never even got to touch the beer. And it wasn't like I let it sit there for 3 minutes and then went back. It literally, they slit it, they hit it as the bartender's hand's on the beer, the bouncer's grabbing it. And they say, you're shut off. And I said, that's fine, I want my money back. And the bouncer's like, you're out of here, blah, 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 blah. And starts swearing, and I was like, fuck you. And we're yelling back and forth. Next thing I know, I'm slammed on the ground, face first. My nose starts bleeding, I'm getting handcuffed. It's cops. Under arrest, drunk in public. So what the fuck are you talking about? I got arrested for drunk in public and disorderly conduct. So I did the old Ron White. I'm not in public, I'm in the bar, you know. Cop was a complete dick. I won't go into all the details. I get to the drunk tank. No one can come pick me up, so it looks like I'm probably going to get sent to like the city jail for the night. Okay, whatever. I start talking to the officer that's processing me inside. Very cool guy. Starts bullshitting at me. Basically, by the end of the night, he tells me to fight the charges. And the ending of the story is he actually came in front of the... I paid my fine, but I fought the charges. This cop came in front of the judge and argued on my behalf and got all the charges dropped. And basically told me that the cop that arrested me is a big dick, right? But here's the reason I tell the story. When I'm sitting there talking, I'm like, well, what's my charges? And he's like, drunk in public. And I was like, whatever. And he's like, disorderly conduct. And I was like, I didn't do disorderly conduct. And he's like, yeah, you did. And I was like, no. He's like, yeah, you want to see the law? So I'm in Pennsylvania. And the law basically says something to the effect of disorderly conduct's anything that could be considered like a nuisance or disturbing to members of the public. He's like, driving down the road and your radio's a little loud? Disorderly conduct. Having an argument with your girlfriend walking down the street? Disorderly conduct. He says the law is basically written as such that it's a catch-all. We could literally charge 99% of the people on any given time with disorderly conduct. That's why it's written that way. So if they think that you did some crime and they can't prove it, they'll say, well, we'll charge you with disorderly conduct. And he's not wrong. I technically committed disorderly conduct by arguing with a bouncer. That's disorderly. It's conduct. The problem is, if the law is written such that 90% of the people are guilty, but you're only selectively enforcing it against certain categories of people, that's a huge problem. So when he uses this definition from the Colorado court that they didn't use, but they cited, the problem with it is it's just like using force or threat of force. Well, force we understand. So you can say you use force if you're at a protest and the police fight you and you fight back. You've used force. How many protests have you seen like that? Hundreds? Okay, all of them meet the first condition. They used force. So they met the first condition of an insurrection. The second condition is or threat of force. Okay, well, what's that? If you're walking down the street with 100 people holding your fist up like the Black Panther is yelling no justice, no peace, seems to be a threat of force. An argument could be made that it's a threat of force, particularly if your organization or organizations like you have clashed with police before. Okay, so that's 80% of left-wing protest meet the first condition, force or threat of force. Next, group of people. Easily said, protest, sure. Protesting laws, trying to affect changes of laws. That's most protest. If we say, okay, 50% of all protests you've ever seen by this definition meet insurrection. And so technically, January 6th was an insurrection then. Right, but so were all these other ones. Why was nothing done? Why did no one call them an insurrection? And then the question becomes, Pisco says, the excuse I always, when I say is like, oh, well, he says, oh, there were other insurrections. I said, did you call them out at the time? The excuse I always hear is, I didn't have social media. Pisco can't say that because I know that's bullshit. And he goes further. He says, I did criticize like the Chaz Zone. I did criticize some of the Black Lives Matter shit. I said, oh, cool. Did you call them insurrections? Well, there was no need to. Well, why? If they were an insurrection, I could go to Pisco's timeline right now and he says, you can't support insurrectionists. You can't support them. These are insurrections. Almost all exclusively on the left. Many of which were supported by Democrats. Imagine. Pisco in his head, he didn't say it publicly, but in his head, he's like, these are damn insurrectionists. That's huge. Insurrection, trying to overthrow the government. The laws of the government. That's an insurrection. This is terrible. All these people paying lip service to their movement, and Pisco's never once saying, well, we can't support insurrectionists. Never once says it. Why? Well, I just didn't think it was important to call it an insurrection at the time. Well, it sounds like the term insurrection isn't that big of a deal then. If you saw a bunch of insurrections and never bothered to call it an insurrection. May 29th, 30th, 2020. He has no answer for it. None of them do. Unlike January 6th, where there weren't serious lethal weapons that were deployed, there were lethal weapons deployed at police. Is that an insurrection? What about all the people? Is it evidence of engaging in an insurrection if people made fun of Donald Trump, who had to be moved? There was an insurrection. The president had to be taken away by Secret Service, and a bunch of people, including politicians, laughed at him. Is that evidence of engaging in an insurrection? Just curious. Just curious. A bunch of people said that deploying the National Guard to stop them would be authoritarian. A bunch of people said it wasn't a big deal. Elected officials, too. Is that engaging in an insurrection? Well, that's different. Yeah, they had laser pointers, like high-level laser pointers that were trying to blind police officers. Yeah. Then when Pisco's like, there were weapons. Bludgeoning weapons? Like this? Well, there's a bludgeoning weapon. Piercing weapons? There's a pen. That's a piercing weapon. Projectiles? Oh, they could throw rocks. Those are projectiles. Right, define weapon. Thank you. The first streamer that pops up without boobies. Well, that's technically not true. I do have boobies, unfortunately, but thanks so much for the follow. Appreciate it. The Whiskey Rebellion, the reason I think you might be able to say it was an insurrection is because you literally had a group of people that were armed with the weapons prevalent of the time, like guns. A group of people that showed up onto a field to try to engage with the military. That's different than a group of people where almost no guns, and no guns brandished or deployed. It's a completely different scenario. Now, another thing that's funny about this definition argument that Pisco's making, he says, when we're looking at the definitions, like the specific words matter. That matters. We can't have a colloquial definition like me. Nope, the specific words all matter. Okay, well, for those that didn't know, the 14th Amendment, Section 3 says, if you're an elected official or served in some capacity, and you have engaged in an insurrection, a coup, or provided aid and comfort to an enemy of the United States, you can no longer hold office. Now, the specific reading of that is, provide aid or comfort to enemies of the United States. Does it say provide aid and comfort to domestic enemies of the United States? No, it doesn't say that. So the literal words, again, Pisco will say, well, we have to look at the definition of insurrection at the time in the 1860s. We have to go by the literal words. That matters. Okay, let's go by the literal words, aid and abet, or aid and provide aid and comfort to enemies. Joe Biden did that. He gave Iran $6 billion. No, it's only domestic enemies, not foreign enemies. Then why didn't it include the word domestic? And he says, well, because we have to look at what their intent was. So we can't just look at the words on the page. We have to say, what was their intent? Okay, well, their intent was clearly to prevent people in the Civil War. So like a person who was a senator and then sided with the South and was like leading with a saber the charge against the North. And then the war is over and that senator's like, okay, I want to be senator again. And they're like, no, you can't do that. That's what the intent was. So much so that within like, most of the people were basically, I don't want to say pardoned, but were basically let off the hook within 3 years, and total pardon was given within like 20 years. So even then, the people that engaged in the Civil War, they were like, that's the intent of the rule, but even then, we'll let people basically. That's completely different than a sitting president challenging election results and a riot getting out of hand. It is completely, it is clear that that wasn't the intent. It is absolutely clear it wasn't the intent. But it doesn't matter. You got to do a specific, you see, when it's convenient to Pisco, you have to look specifically at just what the words on the page say. Sorry, that's it. And if that means that there's hundreds of insurrections a year, that matters. We have to go by the specific words. But then you're like, okay, let's look at the literally after the paragraph, or the parenthesis, or I'm sorry, after the comma, the very next thing. Aid and comfort to enemy. No. We don't look at the exact words. We look at intent. Oh, okay. Well, then back with insurrection, let's look at intent. No. We don't look at intent. We look at the exact words. Oh, well, if we're looking at exact words, then aid and comfort to enemy. No. We don't look at exact words there. Look like a ruby cherry. Thanks. Ray Epps, right. And it was a point that I really wanted to get to because I didn't know. I watched this documentary today. I forget what it was called. It was on in the background. But I was amazed by the Ray Epps stuff. I knew that I'd seen the video of him saying the day before, we're going to go and storm the Capitol. Then the video that day is saying, we're going to the Capitol. Right? Then I knew that he's text messaged his nephew that he orchestrated it. And I knew that he was there whispering in the ear of the guy when the first breach happened. But I didn't know he was there at like 3 separate breaches. Like 3 times. Every time on I think the west side, they started to breach the gate. He was right there. He's one of the first people. And he's talking to people. And then he's walking up and down the line. Like the cops are standing there and he's walking right in between the cops and the people. No one really interfering with him. Talking to people. Sort of like whispering to other people. 3 times. But then the worst part was, and I can't believe I'd never seen this. When you look, so here's something, we didn't get to talk about this. This is very difficult to talk about. How can I simultaneously, and this is a big gotcha from Pisco, right? How could Rob saying they had evidence of an insurrection, so therefore it's an insurrection? No, it wasn't an insurrection. There were people that were LARPing and saying bad shit. And I don't really have that big of a problem if you want to treat those people significantly in a different way. If you say, I think that it's overkill. But okay, let's say that those 20, 25 people, that doesn't make an insurrection. The vast majority of the people there weren't talking big like, we're going to kill Mike Pence, blah, 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 blah. And those people that were saying that didn't bring weapons. They didn't bring the proper shit to do what they were claiming. But I understand those threats, hearing that sort of shit, that you as the Capitol Chief Police, if you had that evidence, would be like, okay, now we have to have increased security. That I understand, so I get where Son's coming from. I also get where Son's coming from that day. Because they are completely overwhelmed. They are. And so when he says my officers are fighting for the life, it's sort of true. However, if you look at the footage on the ground, I'm sorry to say 95% of it isn't that bad. It's just not. January 6th in the video from it is less violent than the fucking average Seattle protest you would see or Portland, Oregon protest that you would see on a nightly basis. Like, the clashes with police are almost all like this. Like, it's not like people are... Now, there's a little of that at the very end when they're in the tunnel and they're beating the shit out of that one lady. But most of it's like they throw a cardboard sign at the cops. A lot of it is the cops will shoot tear gas into them. They'll throw the tear gas back. In fact, one of the craziest things, I couldn't believe this. At least 2 times, the reason that the police had to... I'm not making this up, by the way. At least 2 times that the police had to fall back from the perimeter they were in. You know why they had to fall back? Because the police themselves fucked up shooting the tear gas and shot it at themselves instead of the crowd. Twice that happened. Twice! Not they shot it in the crowd and the crowd threw it back. They literally twice try to shoot it and it lands like right in front of them and everyone's like, whoa, 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 and they have to back up. Twice! Even when they're deploying tear gas and shit like that, the majority of the police interacting with the people, it's still just them like yelling at each other. It's surreal. Now, there were actions that I think were criminal. There are people smashing windows out. That's criminal. No dispute here. Absolutely. And it looks bad. There were people that were like literally running up and shoving cops. A handful. Yeah, that's criminal. I didn't see anyone like beating them with clubs or anything like that, really. There were interactions where police and people were throwing fists back, but very few. The bulk, and this is what's important. When you have Sun saying things are getting out of control, it's like 12:57 when he calls in the National Guard. The violence that I've been able to see, and maybe there's other, I'll concede that, but the violence I've been able to see was basically pushing and shoving against police officers. What Ray Epps did, shoving that sign into the officers, was as high a level of violence as anything that I saw. That's a felony. Grab the sign, slam it into a cop. Felony. So when people say, well, Epps didn't go into the Capitol, he told people to go in the day before and the day of. He was literally at the front of the perimeter 3 times. Was one of the first people to go through the perimeter. So what happens is there's a lot of people, right? And the video I watched, it's persuasive when it talks about this. Imagine that there's a like plastic fence set up. And on that fence, it has signs that say, do not enter, do not enter, do not enter. And a guy walks up to that fence and tears it down. Okay, that guy clearly vandalized that property and entered and knew he wasn't allowed. No argument here. The people standing around that guy clearly knew that they weren't supposed to be in that area and they went in. No argument here. But what about the person that comes a half hour later? They never saw that sign. What about them? They also trespassed illegally? So if you're one of the first people to breach the perimeter, I understand that that's different than being one of the people in the back. If there's bike racks set up and a bunch of people shove through them, okay, I understand. Those people know they're not supposed to be beyond those bike racks. That's worse than the people that are 80 people deep and they can't really see what's going on. They just see some sort of skirmish and then everyone's walking ahead and the police aren't there anymore. So I understand saying those first people should be charged more significantly. Okay, but that's Ray Epps 3 times. And he was given probation. Now, I'm not saying that this proves that Ray Epps is a Fed. We know that there were Feds in the crowd and there were confidential humans, or there were sources in the crowd. We know that. But let's, for the sake of argument, say Epps isn't one of them. Can you blame people for pointing out the disparate treatment? And why is it that this particular person is the only one that someone like Liz Cheney or Adam Kissinger defend? I thought it went great. I thought I did very well. And there's no, and Pisco's just like, felony requires some sort of intent. Again, so many of the people that were charged with violence towards police, when will the debate go up? It's on the Crucible Rumble channel, but I'll try to see what I could do tomorrow. I'll get in touch with Andrew and see if he has a hard recorded copy that he could email me, and then I'll try to have it up tomorrow or the day after is the plan. I think Pisco also has it up on his channel, so you can check it out there, but I will try to get it up on my channel. You know, the only other attack that Pisco has, he obfuscates on these... And here's another thing that's like shit. When I say things, like, Pisco knows where I'm going, right? I'm not going to say I've never done this, but, like, if I see evidence that pushes back against something that I'm saying, I try to include that with when I talk. Pisco does the opposite. So Pisco knows, he's read the written testimony of Sund. He knows what Sund says. But he doesn't say it. So, like, for example, when he says, well, Sund talks about the Norfolk memo, that's true. I forgot exactly what the Norfolk memo said. Sund is very clear in his most recent testimony that he does think that there was intelligence that was sent to Yolanda Pittman, but she never gave it to the rest of his... Yolanda Pittman, for those that don't know, she was the head of intelligence at the Capital City Police. So Stephen Sund's the top dude, and then there's branches below him. One of them is the intelligence branch, because the Capitol Police have their own intelligence branch. And basically, anytime there's a rally and things like that, they're working with other intelligence officials to see what's going on. So Yolanda Pittman's underneath him, and she's in charge of intelligence. So what happened is the FBI sent her one briefing, and that briefing just said, like, yeah, there could be bloodshed. People are preparing for, like, violent combat with Antifa. That's not so different than what they were saying outside of that. Because if you look at the recommendations that Sund was putting out and that all these agencies were putting out, they say, right out of the gate, they say things like, we expect 3 groups to show up, 2 pro-Trump groups and 1 anti-Trump group. And there's a possibility of conflict like we've seen skirmishes in the past. Now, Sund's right. This Norfolk intelligence is more significant than just, like the past random skirmishes. Because it's actually people saying shit like, well, we're going to take care of fucking business. So that's a little different than just saying random skirmishes could break out. That's people preparing to fight. But not the police, not Mike Pence, just counter-protesters. But, so Pisco's right. That was given to Pittman. Pittman never gave it to Sund. And Sund says he should have got that. And it could have influenced their ability to have security. All of that's true. What he leaves out is that Sund said the things that were the most important to the intelligence were the claims of the attack on Mike Pence's life and the attempts to kill police officers and attempts at an insurrection. All of that is of a magnitude so much higher than the memo that was sent to Pittman that he didn't receive. Yes, he agrees. He should have got the memo that Pittman got. But he's saying all of this other shit's more important. And Pisco's like, no, none of that matters. He says he should have got... They sent this one memo to Pittman, that's good enough. Then when he's backed into a corner why that's absurd, he then makes this argument, and it's constantly... It's so funny because I've been accused of just being like spinning a narrative. That's the only answer Pisco has to answer any of this. Well, okay, if it was really an FBI cover-up, why did they send any memo? What? This is the same argument Destiny tries to make, right? Well, if it's true that a whistleblower spoke up about the Wiener laptop, then that's proof that whistleblowers would have spoke up any other time there was FBI corruption. What are you talking about? There's no answer as to why the Sergeant at Arms... And again, when you listen to the mainstream media, this is what they'll say. Sergeant at Arms, Nancy Pelosi and the Sergeant at Arms did not have the ability to deploy the National Guard. It is false to say, if you go to the fact checkers, PolitiFact right now, false claim that the Sergeant at Arms under Nancy Pelosi prevented the National Guard. Well, technically true, but Stephen Sund, the guy who was the on-the-ground expertise to determine if the National Guard was needed or not, said we need it. He then he was required by law. And you understand the difficulty. You understand the sleight of hand they do. They say, well, the Sergeant at Arms isn't necessary. He can't deploy the National Guard. Right. But in order for Sund to request the National Guard, the Sergeant at Arms has to sign off. So Sund is not legally allowed to just say, excuse me, I need the National Guard. He can't say that to the National Guard. He can't give that request until he gets permission from the National Guard. He called him 11 times. He waited 71 minutes. He's provided all of the phone records. Even Pisco says, I tend to agree with him and believe he's telling the truth more than Irving. Irving says that the call never happened until 2. And the first time he got the call, he said, yes, I'll give you the authority for the National Guard. That's bullshit. That's a lie. That's a lie under oath. Or Pisco might say, well, he just forgot. Nonetheless, then there needs to be some sort of accountability. Why the fuck did you withhold from 71 minutes? How would you forget that? How would you forget that for 71 minutes a dude called you 11 times and said, can you give me authority to request the National Guard? And it slipped your mind. All you remember is, and it would be different to say, oh, I didn't remember the call. But he would have remembered what he said. I have to kick it up the chain of command. But his testimony was, no, as soon as he called, I said yes. That was his testimony. What's the explanation? None. Just, well, incompetence. They didn't know. Fog of war. They didn't know. Okay. Then once permission's given to request, he then gets on the phone with people that he has to from, like, the military. The guy from the military, Baeta, says, nah, I don't like it because of optics. This is after people are in the Capitol. Why be on the Crucible again this month? Perhaps. I don't know. Now, you could barely get through any of these details. Literally, I wanted to get to this story, right? There's two things that... There is the actions or lack of actions before January 6th, and then the actions or lack of actions on January 6th. There was 20 minutes left when I got to on January 6th. He just says things like, well, so many people would need to be involved. Right, same with the FISA warrant bullshit. That's what people said. No, the FBI could never get illegal FISA warrants based on opposition research from the political opponent they were spying on. They could never do that. That would be outrageous. You know how many people would have to be involved? But that's what happened. Then they said, oh, hundreds of people would need to be involved. No, not really. Well, Pittman would need to be involved. Yeah, to some level. And these FBI agents like Dentona would be involved. Yeah, people at the FBI intentionally did that. That's true. So maybe you could say a handful, 5, 6, the higher-ups. The lower level people that were embedded, they may have, like, for example, in my work with home health care, there are certain scenarios where I am legally obligated to fill what's called an incident report out. And so it's not what you think. It doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, the police came or something like that. An incident report could be something like, I'm working with a gentleman and he falls and gets hurt and gets a bad cut in his knee. I would legally have to file an incident report. And then that report goes to my office, and then they send it to the appropriate state inspectors. The state needs to know that. The state's financing companies like mine that do home health care, and so they need to be made, there's certain rules and regulations, and that's one of the regulations. Now, a lot of this stuff's done electronically now, and it makes it simple for the state, because if I submit an incident report on the computer, it goes to my office, but then it's automatically saved in a database, and anytime the state needs to see that, no problem. They get it, and it goes out to the right people at the state. But when I started in this field like 13 years ago, it was pen and paper. And I worked with, I hesitate to talk about negative stuff with my work. But my first person that I ever worked, and I have to be careful, I'm not going to say names of the companies or anything like that. The first person that I was the primary person that I was taking care of that was an adult with a lot of disabilities and a lot of autism and seizures and things of that nature. And they were the strongest human I've ever seen in my life. And I'll just say that I was put in the hospital several times in my caretaking of this person. It was still a person that I cared deeply about. And it's not good memories for me because unfortunately the person's passed away. But it was someone that I cared about despite... It was not only someone that I cared about, but I think I was maybe the only person in the world that cared about this person. It's just really it was really sad. It really was. Nonetheless, I advocated over and over again that this guy could not be in our company. Although I am sort of libertarian adjacent, and I truly have a big heart with people with disabilities and autism. I truly do. And I want maximum freedom for the people that I work with. But there are certain conditions and things like that the quality of life of the individual and the community at large requires some sort of restrictions. And our company wasn't a company that offered those available restrictions. And so what happened was there was a lot of engagements with law enforcement where tasers were deployed or batons were deployed, which to me is not a good quality of life. It seems like a more restrictive environment on a day-to-day basis that doesn't have those horrible incidents would be beneficial. But regardless of what my opinions were, I was required when certain things would happen to file incident reports. I would fill out on average probably 2 or 3 a day. These were paper incident reports. I couldn't figure out why the state was allowing this to occur. It seemed like such an unsafe environment for both the person I was taking care of, for the staff, and for members of the community, and for members of law enforcement. Why would the state continue to allow this to occur? Now, full disclosure, when there are challenging people, oftentimes the state pays more money for companies to take because other companies have said, no, we won't take them. So they'll pay you more. It's a perverse bounty system. So the company was making a ton of money. I'm making like $10 an hour. It's something ludicrous like that. And I'm there like every day. And I'm the only consistent person that's working. And I'm filling out all these incident reports. And I'm really trying to advocate. Like, I think we should get, this person. It's not that I don't want to be in their life. It's not that I don't want to help take care of it. But I think they need to be in a better environment. But I'm doing my legally obligated filling out these incident reports. After it all went south and that client ended up getting moved out of our company, I was talking to someone at the office and they said, hey, Rob, all those incident reports you sent here? And I was like, yeah. They're like, you know where those went? Right in the trash. That's where they went. They weren't going to the state because if the state saw that there were 3 incident reports a day, they would say, no, you can't do that. This is not a safe environment. We can't have this going on. Right? Now me, the guy on the ground, I was filling out the report. I thought everything was on the up and up. The reason I bring this up, if you're embedded with some violent group and you're a FBI agent and you're filing your reports, that doesn't mean you're involved in a conspiracy if that never makes it to the appropriate people. And maybe the person you're filing it to, your regional director or something, they're taking that and they're passing it up the chain like they're supposed to. It's not as if you needed 500 FBI agents to be involved in this scheme. And again, the same's true with the Russiagate shit. It was the top brass. Now, you could say, but aren't there more whistleblowers that should speak up and stuff like that in the FBI? Yeah, but when they try, like the 2 FBI whistleblowers on the Hunter Biden, they're attacked. 3 of them. They lose their jobs. They're fired. They're treated maliciously. And by the way, Sund has testified that there are allegations of whistleblowers post-January 6th at the U.S. Capitol Police that have been punished. So people like Destiny will say, where are the whistleblowers? Then when there are whistleblowers, they get punished and no one talks about it. And we never hear what the whistleblowers had to say. Now, I would love to talk to Rakita Law, but I've never talked to him. Maybe I'll reach out. Oh, All-Star, you work in a similar organization. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about then. Yeah. We're more digital now, which is nice 95%. There's sometimes I wish we did pen and paper for some stuff. But that's what I'm saying. So how many people were really required? It's not as if they're saying. But when you have the key people, like there's a key person in the chain of events. There is the guy that is the top agent in charge of this, of briefing for January 6th. On January 5th, the guy from the FBI is literally on a phone call, listening to them talk about the plan, saying, we don't have any specific intelligence of, credible threats that are going to come or anything like that. And this FBI guy, that guy that's tasked with it, is sitting here listening to this like, and isn't saying, oh, actually, that's not true. We do have specific intelligence. Now, maybe that guy wasn't involved. Maybe he was never informed. Wouldn't that guy be public right now going, this is a fucking disgrace? Who at the FBI intentionally sat on this evidence or incompetently? What, isn't that what they would be doing? But they're not. Have you heard that conversation? They know that it's a massive, at the very least, it's a massive failure at the FBI and people don't trust the FBI. So wouldn't there be some form of public accountability? Or wouldn't at least the January 6th committee, wouldn't they be talking about it? But they're not. Where's the explanation? By the way, that guy, the top of the FBI, you know what his name was? Steve D'Antonio. You know who he is? Yeah, he's the same guy that was in the field office with the Gretchen Whitmer, that was in task with the Gretchen Whitmer FedNet hoax. So it's not unprecedented. Literally just months before January 6th, the same lead FBI guy did the same shit. Half the people involved in the Whitmer kidnapping hoax were fucking FBI people. It's a bunch of FBI dudes sitting around saying, hey, you know what you should do, man? You should kidnap her. I don't know. Yeah, you should. Here, this guy, John FBI over here. Yeah, man, you should kidnap her. What's what Kevin FBI has to say? Yeah, man, kidnap the shit out of her. Oh, and then it just happens to come out right before the election. It's like, see, a big story. MAGA people are dangerous. What? Thanks, Marcus. I appreciate it. You got the same guy, the Sergeant at Arms under Nancy Pelosi. He's asked, hey, can we get the National Guard? No, I don't like it for optics. Then he secretly calls the other Sergeant at Arms and says, hey, don't allow the National Guard. Nancy Pelosi wouldn't allow it. Now that's bad enough, but then that same dude is called 1257 on the day of January 6th by Sun and says, can we have the National Guard now? Because legally I have to go through you. You have to say yes before I can request it. And he says, I'll kick it up the chain of command to Nancy Pelosi. I'll let you know. 11 times he's called. 71 minutes. He doesn't say yes. After 71 minutes in the 11th call, he says, okay. His recollection when he testifies under oath is, oh no, I wasn't called 11 times. I was only called once. And it was like at 2 o'clock and I said yes. He forgot that 11 times he said, nah, I can't yet. Or 10 times. He forgot that. Which raises two questions. One, why did he not immediately say yes? What's his explanation? And two, why did he lie? Same guy who said Nancy Pelosi would never go for the same fucking dude. And what they tell you is, oh, it's fucking ridiculous conspiracy. This is conspiracy. 1 million people would have to be involved in this. 1 million people. So, I enjoyed the debate thoroughly. Again, I don't want anyone, and I know my audience is great. Yeah, I wish I had help researching. I never have free time. I would be much better if I had time to sit down and research all this shit. Yeah, that's definitely true. Well, I have my Discord, and I know some people send me some stuff, and I don't do a good job of getting back to them. But yeah. And the difficult part with people helping me research is I still have to read their research, so I still have to find time for that. I know I don't have to tell my audience this, but I don't want people brigading Pisco or treating him unfairly. From the bottom of my heart, I mean this. I don't dislike Pisco as a person. I still enjoy talking to him, though I don't see how anyone could look at the Jamal Bowman thing and think that he's not a bad faith sack of shit. But I still enjoy talking to him, even though I know he'll be partisan beyond belief. I know that, right? Even in the face of overwhelming evidence. I understand that. It still helps me have a further understanding of the situations, and I enjoy the challenge of debate. And I think that if you're watching and you don't think that Pisco's, you might think he's slimy, he's at least a competent debater when it comes to sort of the average people that you see online. That's absolutely true. And that's what I like. It's the same reason I like debating Destiny. So I don't wish any ill on Pisco. I don't. Honestly don't. So I don't want people brigading or anything like that. And I know I don't have to say that because my audience is awesome. You know, you might say, hey, you suck ass or something if you see him on a stream, but that's obviously not what I'm talking about. Did he admit that, McBacon Love? Maybe he did. I don't know. But I did thoroughly enjoy the debate. And shout out to Andrew Wilson and the Crucible. I'll try to get that debate up my channel. I'm sorry that my computer shit the bed and I was unable to live stream and participate in the debate. At one point I had to bring in the backup and talk on the phone a little, so that was kind of funny. But no, I enjoyed it. I thought I did a fantastic job, but I left some shit in the table because of sort of the obfuscation tactics that you see Pisco make. And I regret that. I wish I would have been able to get into more specific details. And perhaps this week, we will go through some of the testimony, go through some of the video again, and we'll be able to go through the details more specifically without Pisco rambling on and obfuscating and things like that. And so you'll get a better idea. Thanks so much, Zens, for it. I appreciate it. So hope everyone appreciate it. I hope the people, one of the things is, I do think that if I'm honest with myself, I'm recognizing myself as one of the best conservative type debaters out there. And now I'm starting to get a new motivation that's not a good one. And that is, I don't want to let people down. I don't want people to be like, yeah, man, fucking this guy, watch robnoerr do great. He'll debate your ass, blah, blah, blah. And then I have a shitty night. And then I let people down. So I'm glad I didn't tonight. I'm glad I think I did fantastic. Again, my sort of frustrations are that I wish it was a 7-hour debate because I think I would have did much better to be able to get into more specific details. It's usually a good sign of who thinks they're doing well in the debate that they want it to keep going, which I certainly did. Would have loved for it to keep going. So I would be happy to debate him more and talk about this. Thanks, McBacon Love. Yeah, I'm supposed to be talking to Ian Crossland. That's changed. I think it's going to be like February 2nd or 3rd now at 1 p.m. But that'll be, I'll be at home for that, so I'll actually have my good computer. But Ian is the co-host of Tim Pool's show, so hopefully that is a step in the right direction to be able to get on a bigger show, which I would enjoy. So I hope you all enjoyed this. I know I did. I probably won't talk to you tomorrow. Maybe I will. Oh, by the way, check out my TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube, any of those three. I'm trying to put short videos up every day. I get almost no exposure on those videos. None. And I've been putting them up for over a week now, but I really am trying to put like a 2 or 3 minute video up every day. And I'll keep doing it. I'm committed to doing it. It's something I want to do. But it does get frustrating when I'll put one of these videos up and it's like 20 views, it gets a little frustrating, and it's obviously different. It's not going deep dive like when I do a 3-hour debate or a 5-hour stream or something. It's a 2-minute, it's a summary. It's a 2.5 minute. Today it was on Dr. Fauci. Thanks, Ori. I appreciate it. So, I hope everyone enjoyed it. Check out. I'll probably be putting a short video up tomorrow. I'm going to get some sleep. That's my big plan. Get some sleep. Put a little I like to watch Seinfeld on Netflix on my phone as I fall asleep. I find it soothing. And George is sort of my spirit animal. So thank you all so much. I will talk to you all soon. As always, have a good one.